Well, for more on this, I spoke to Barak Barfi. He's a research fellow at the New America Foundation. He doesn't believe Turkey will follow through on threats to attack pro-Syrian militia if Damascus comes to the aid of Kurdish forces.
These are hollow threats. They're paper tigers. These are rhetoric to try to jockey for position between the sides. I don't think the Turks are going to take the Syrians on, because then they'll have a problem not only with the Syrians but with the Iranians and the Russians. And they don't want to fight all these groups at the same time while I have to deal with the Kurds.
But apparently Turkey, Russia, and Iran are all working together in Syria's northern Idlib province to establish a de-escalation zone there. What would that mean for this battle?
This is not very good for the United States. We are the big loser here. Why? The regime redeploys forces to the border. It can now encircle the rebels in Idlib to the south of Afrin, and then in Azaz corridor to the east of Afrin. And it could really roll up the rest of the rebels in the northern areas. And then Syria could create problems for Turkey by firing all kinds of missiles and rockets, so they could heat up the border area whenever they wanted. So we have the worst of both worlds at this point in time.
So how does the U.S. sort of jockey its position in this war on the ground there when the U.S. has been supporting the YPG?
Well, first of all, Washington needs to step up its diplomacy. The President and the Secretary of State have got to come up with a message. They've got to come up with a strategy and then implement it by talking to their allies. Washington really dropped the ball on this Turkish operation because they've alienated President Erdogan with all these broken promises for 2-3 years. Joe Biden, in I think August 2016, told the YPG it had to get out of Manbij. 2 years later, it's still in Manbij. This is a problem for the United States. We need to come up with a strategy. We need to have our military and diplomats then implement it. And without that, we're going to see many more of these dilemmas and crises that are created every day in Syria.
So Erdogan is saying that he has actually spoken on the phone with Vladimir Putin and said he told him that Damascus would face real consequences. Is he asking essentially Russia to get involved?
It's very complicated right now. Putin and Erdogan have an excellent relationship. The Russians gave the Turks a green light for the operation in Afrin a couple days before. The head of intelligence and the chief of staff, the military chief of staff, went to Moscow. So it's doubtful that the Turks at this point in time would go against the Russians. They really need the Russians on their side. The Russians control the airspace in these areas. They can make dealing in Syria a nightmare for the Turks. So I highly doubt that Erdogan is going to create any problems on the ground for the Russians and the Syrians. It's just rhetoric at this point in time.
What does this mean for those living inside Turkey? There are reports that many people have been arrested for expressing their views on social media in opposition against Erdogan in this offensive.
Well, when the Turks announced Operation Olive Branch, they declared a number of goals, saying that they were going to dislodge the Kurds from Afrin, dislodge them from Manbij, clear them from the whole border to the Iraq, all the way to Iraq. But the real goals were mostly political. There's an election in November 2019. Erdogan might want to move up the elections, call snap elections with his popularity so high because of this operation. And it gave him an opportunity to muzzle his critics, arrest more and more people that he's been doing since the 2016 coup. So this is probably one of his chief goals, if not the chief one, crushing internal dissent, arresting all his critics.